Right there at the Christmas dinner table. He called me a leech, and from that moment on, every bill in that house vanished along with me in a single night. I didn't break anything, I just pulled the strings I'd been silently holding up for 6 months, then laid them before a judge. When the gavel came down, the word Leech reversed its arrow, and the man who raised me was forced to read aloud, in open court, everything I'd been paying for him. My name is Lauren Hayes, and at 29, I found myself dragging a cardboard box of desk supplies up the front steps of my childhood home in Cedar Ridge, Michigan. The October wind cut through my blazer, the same one I'd worn to my termination meeting at Halobyte Systems 3 days earlier. Budget restructuring, they'd called it. 14 months of redesigning their entire user interface, gone with a severance check that would barely cover 2 months' rent in the city. The key still worked, though it stuck halfway like it always had. Inside, the house smelled wrong, fresh paint instead of the cinnamon candles Mom used to burn before she died. I hauled my suitcase upstairs, each step creaking its own specific note I remembered from sneaking in after curfew in high school. My old room had transformed into something from a furniture catalog. Gone were the thumbtack holes from band posters, the scuff marks from my desk chair. Everything was beige and guest-ready, as Dad would say. A stack of real estate magazines sat on the nightstand where my journal used to live. The closet held extra bedding instead of my old drawings. Even the window where I'd carved my initials with a compass in 8th grade had been replaced with double-paned glass that didn't rattle in the wind. "It's temporary," Gerald said from the doorway, still in his work clothes despite it being 7:30 p.m. He'd been watching me survey the changes, arms crossed like he was calculating depreciation on my presence. "You'll find something soon." "You're smart." Smart. I'd been smart when I graduated summa cum laude. Smart when I landed the Halobyte job. Smart right up until the moment I wasn't profitable anymore. "Thanks, Dad." I set my laptop bag on the dresser, now painted white, instead of the cherry wood I remembered. "I've already got some leads, a few freelance projects." He nodded, that quick jerk of his chin that meant conversation over. "Dinner's at 6. Don't be late." He paused at the door. "And Lauren, this is just until you get back on your feet. We're clear on that, right?" Crystal clear. Gerald Hayes didn't do charity, not even for his eldest daughter. He was an internal accountant at a manufacturing firm, had been for 23 years. Numbers were his language, efficiency his religion. After Mom died when I was 15, he'd run the house like a spreadsheet: inputs, outputs, balanced columns. Paige had learned to speak his language, gotten her accounting degree, married Trevor, who worked in finance. They had their suburban house, their 5-year plan, their proper place in his ledger. I unpacked slowly, placing my things around the edges of the room like a guest who didn't want to impose. My design books went under the bed. My tablets and styluses stayed in their cases. I kept one photo on the nightstand me at my Halobyte desk, grinning over the first prototype that would later be scrapped in the restructuring. That first week, I sent out 37 applications. I redesigned my portfolio twice. I cold-emailed every creative director in a 100-mile radius. The rejections came in different flavors. Not currently hiring. Impressive, but not quite the right fit. Or my favorite, the ghosting silence that said everything without saying anything. By week 2, I'd picked up a small freelance gig designing email templates for a local bakery. $300 that I immediately put toward my minimums. By week 3, I was designing social media graphics for a dog groomer and a logo for my high school friend's podcast about conspiracy theories. Not exactly the user experience innovation I'd trained for, but it was work. "You should consider teaching," Gerald suggested one night over his usual dinner of baked chicken and steamed vegetables. "Stable, benefits, summers off to do your little design projects." Little design projects. Like my work was a hobby, something to squeeze in around the edges of real life. I stabbed a Brussels sprout and reminded myself temporary. This was temporary. I told myself that through November's rejections, through Thanksgiving where Paige announced Trevor's promotion while I quietly did the dishes. I told myself that right up until December, when I stood in the kitchen making lists, gifts I couldn't afford, recipes I could manage, ways to make this Christmas feel warm despite the cold that had settled into the walls of this house. Just temporary. Until it wasn't. 206 applications. That's what my spreadsheet showed by mid-December. 206 carefully crafted cover letters, portfolios tailored to each company's aesthetic, references lined up like soldiers, 17 phone screens, 4 in-person interviews, 0 offers. Meanwhile, the house ran on my invisible labor. I woke at 6 every morning to make coffee. Gerald liked it strong, ready when he came down at 6:45. I planned meals, made grocery lists, cooked dinner. I scrubbed the bathroom grout with an old toothbrush. I patched the drywall in the hallway where Gerald had bumped it moving a filing cabinet. I repainted the back deck in November's last warm spell, my fingers numb around the brush. The internet bill had been coming to me since I'd upgraded Gerald's plan 2 years ago during a visit, never bothering to switch it back to his name. $99 a month. The streaming services too, Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max, all charged to my card because it's easier than teaching Dad new passwords. Another $47 monthly. The family phone plan I'd consolidated years ago to save everyone money $160 for 3 lines, though only one of them was mine. I paid them. Quietly. Like I paid for groceries every other trip organic chicken for Gerald's diet, the specific brand of yogurt he liked, the expensive coffee beans. 300 here, 200 there. I filled the car with gas whenever I used it, bought the furnace filters, replaced the kitchen faucet cartridge when it started dripping. "Lauren's so helpful," Gerald would tell his brother on the phone, never mentioning the receipts I tucked away in a folder marked temporary expenses, never acknowledging the money flowing out of my dwindling savings while he praised Paige's fiscal responsibility, Trevor's investment acumen. At Sunday dinners, the comparisons came served alongside the pot roast. "Paige just got promoted to senior accountant," Gerald would announce. "Trevor's portfolio is up 18% this quarter." Then the pause, the glance my way. "Any news on the job front?" Lauren. I'd mentioned the freelance project's a website redesign for a local dentist, brand guidelines for a food truck, but Gerald's eyes would glaze over. "Real jobs," he'd clarify, "with benefits, stability." By December, I'd added power to my silent contributions. The electric bill had spiked with the cold, and Gerald had grumbled about the cost. I transferred my half directly to the utility company, noting it in my spreadsheet. Water bill, too. I bought space heaters for the drafty upstairs so we wouldn't have to run the furnace as high, then paid the difference when the bill came anyway. I started photographing everything, screenshots of payment confirmations, pictures of receipts. Photos of the deck I'd painted, the bathroom I'd recaulked, the kitchen shelves I'd reorganized. Not to show anyone, just to remind myself that my contributions existed, even if they were invisible to everyone else. "The house has never run better," Paige admitted one evening, visiting for dinner. She watched me meal prep for the week, containers lined up like a factory assembly line. "Dad's actually eating vegetables." "It's nothing," I said, sealing lids on portions of chicken and roasted Brussels sprouts. Trevor laughed from the living room where he and Gerald were reviewing investment strategies. "Must be nice having a live-in housekeeper," he called out. "Free rent and all." Free rent. As if the roof over my head was charity rather than something I was actively paying for in 100 invisible ways. I said nothing, just added another container to the stack. Let them think what they wanted. I had the receipts. Nina noticed, though. My best friend since middle school. She'd stop by sometimes, see me scrubbing Gerald's coffee-stained mugs or folding his laundry. "You're basically running a free bed and breakfast," she said one afternoon, watching me prep dinner while responding to a client's revision requests on my laptop. "It's temporary," I said. The word automatic now, worn smooth from repetition. "Is it, though?" She picked up the stack of bills I'd been organizing all in my name, all being paid from my account. "Lauren, this is financial abuse." The words sat heavy in the kitchen, mixing with the smell of garlic and rosemary. I wanted to argue, to explain that Gerald wasn't abusive, just practical, focused on the wrong numbers. But I kept the receipts anyway, kept the screenshots, kept the evidence of my worth in folders both digital and physical. Christmas was coming. I'd make it warm, make it perfect, make it impossible to ignore everything I brought to this house. Then I'd find a job, move out, move on. That was the plan. Anyway, the table looked like something from a magazine spread. I'd spent 3 days preparing brining the turkey, making cranberry sauce from scratch, rolling out pie dough at 5 in the morning while Gerald slept. The good china gleamed under the chandelier I'd polished yesterday. Cloth napkins I'd ironed into precise triangles. Centerpiece of pine boughs and white candles I'd assembled from YouTube tutorials. "This is beautiful," Paige said, settling into her chair while Trevor helped her with her coat. They'd arrived 15 minutes late, flushed from the cold, talking about their new neighbor's Tesla. Gerald took his seat at the head of the table, surveying the spread with the same expression he used for quarterly reports. "Very nice," he said, which from him was practically a standing ovation. I'd even dressed for the occasion my one good dress that survived the professional wardrobe purge, navy blue and conservative enough for Gerald's tastes. My feet ached from standing in the kitchen since dawn, but I smiled as I poured the wine, served the salad, made sure everyone had everything they needed. "Let's say grace," Gerald announced, and we bowed our heads. "Thank you, Lord, for this food, for this family, and for the continued success and prosperity you've granted us this year, especially for Paige's promotion and Trevor's excellent investment decisions. Amen." The continued success. As if my unemployment was just a footnote, not worth mentioning to God. We ate in relative silence at first, the sounds of silverware against china filling the space. Trevor complimented the turkey. Paige praised the stuffing. Gerald nodded along, cutting his meat into precise, equal pieces. Then he raised his wine glass. "A toast," he said, and we all lifted our glasses. "To Paige and Trevor, for showing us what responsible adulthood looks like. Your mother would be so proud." The words landed like ice in my chest. I held my glass steady, smiled even, took a sip that tasted like sawdust. "Speaking of responsibility," Gerald continued, setting down his glass with deliberate precision. "Lauren, where exactly are we with the job search?" There it was. The question I'd been dreading all evening, served between the main course and dessert like a palate cleanser of humiliation. "I have several promising leads," I said carefully. "There's a contract position with Northline Creative that looks—" "Contract," Gerald interrupted. "More freelance nonsense. It's a 3-month project with potential for full-time conversion." "Potential?" He said the word like it tasted sour. "You've been here 3 months. Lauren, 3 months of potential." Trevor shifted uncomfortably. Paige studied her wine glass. "I've been working," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "The bakery website launched last week. The pet grooming social media campaign increased their bookings by 30%. "Pocket change," Gerald said, waving his hand dismissively. "Playing on your computer while the rest of us go to real jobs." Playing on my computer. The words hung in the air like the smell of burnt bread. "I've also been maintaining this house," I said quietly. "Cooking, cleaning, repairs. Basic contributions." Gerald cut me off. "The bare minimum for living here rent-free." Rent-free. I thought of the internet bill, the streaming services, the phone plan, the groceries, the utilities I'd been covering, the receipts filed away upstairs. Gerald set down his fork with a decisive clink. "The truth is, Lauren, you've become comfortable living off others, contributing nothing of real value." He looked directly at me, his accountant's eyes calculating. "You're a leech." "You can't stay here anymore." The word hit like a physical blow. "Leech." The candles flickered. One made a small popping sound, wax hitting the tablecloth. Nobody moved to clean it. Paige's mouth opened slightly, then closed. Trevor stared at his plate. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked through the silence, 7:43 p.m. on Christmas Day. The moment my father called me a parasite at the table I'd spent 3 days preparing. After the holidays, Gerald added, as if offering a kindness. You have until New Year's to make other arrangements. I stood up slowly, placing my napkin beside my plate with careful precision. The chair scraped against the floor, the same sound it had made when I was 7. Excusing myself from dinner the night Mom told us she was sick. Excuse me, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I need to check the dessert. I walked to the kitchen with measured steps, past the dishes I'd washed, the counters I'd scrubbed, the floor I'd mopped. Behind me, I heard Trevor mumble something about the economy. Paige's voice, tentative. Dad, don't you think? The matter is settled, Gerald said. I stood at the kitchen sink, gripping the edge of the counter. Through the window, Christmas lights twinkled on the neighbor's house. Normal families were probably playing board games, sharing stories, being grateful for each other's presents. The pies sat cooling on the rack apple and pumpkin, made from scratch. I'd planned to serve them with homemade whipped cream, maybe tell the story about Mom's famous pie crust while we ate. Instead, I pulled out my phone and typed a message to Nina. I need a place to stay and an extra pair of hands. Tonight. Her response came in seconds. On my way. The house was dark except for the kitchen light where I worked. 11:17 p.m., according to the microwave clock. Everyone had gone to bed after dessert pie served in awkward silence, coffee declining into Gerald's monologue about fiscal responsibility. Now, just me and the systematic dismantling of every financial thread I'd woven through this house. Nina had texted back, parked around the corner, take your time. First, the apartment. I pulled up 3 rental listings I'd bookmarked weeks ago, just in case. One caught my eye, a studio in downtown Cedar Ridge, available immediately due to a broken lease. The landlord, Mr. Doyle, had a reputation for quick turnarounds. I scheduled a viewing for 9 a.m. tomorrow, December 26th, the earliest possible escape. Next, the utilities. I opened my laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard with the efficiency of someone who'd designed user interfaces for a living. The internet account came first. Service transfer request to new address, effective December 27th. I downloaded 6 months of billing statements, highlighted my payment history, saved everything to the cloud and a USB drive. The streaming services were easier. Password changes first long. Complex strings Gerald would never guess. Then I removed his profiles, Paige's profiles, Trevor's profiles, changed the number of screens from 4 to 1, downgraded the plans, set them all to cancel on December 31st, giving them 5 days to figure out their own entertainment. The phone plan required more finesse. I initiated a transfer of service responsibility form online, scheduling it for December 27th at midnight. Gerald's line would need its own account, its own credit check, its own setup. The family plan discount would evaporate. His bill would double, maybe triple. I photographed every receipt in my folder, uploaded them to 3 different cloud services. Bank statements showing the automatic payments, email confirmations dating back months. The paper trail of a leech, apparently. The electric company's website was clunky, but I managed to remove myself as the responsible party effective end of billing cycle January 2nd. Same with water, gas, trash collection. Every service I'd quietly absorbed would revert to Gerald's name, or shut off if he didn't act quickly. My fingers trembled as I compiled it all into a spreadsheet. 6 months of expenses, meticulously categorized. Internet, $594. Streaming, $282. Phone, $960. Groceries, approximately $2,400. Utilities contributions, $840. Home repairs and supplies, $620. Total, $6,696. That didn't include the labor, the cooking, cleaning, organizing, the deck painting, the drywall repair, the bathroom recaulking. At Michigan's minimum wage, conservative estimate another $3,000. Nearly $10,000 of value from a leech. I cleared the browser history, signed out of everything, shut the laptop. Then I climbed the stairs one last time, each creak a goodbye. In my room, the guest room I packed with surgical precision. Clothes rolled military style to maximize space, electronics wrapped in sweaters, design books stacked in a milk crate I'd found in the garage. The photo from my desk at Halo Bite went in last, face down. My old jewelry box sat in the bottom drawer of the dresser, forgotten from high school. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was Mom's wedding ring. Gerald had given it to me after the funeral. Said Mom would want me to have it. I left it exactly where it was. 2 suitcases, 3 boxes, 1 backpack. My entire life in this house reduced to what I could carry. I made 4 trips to the back door, setting everything in the mudroom where Nina could help me load it quickly. Back in the kitchen, I wrote a note on the magnetic notepad Gerald used for grocery lists. Transferred all services out of my name effective 12/27. New account setup required for continuity. House key on counter. L. No accusations, no dramatics, just facts, as clean and balanced as Gerald's beloved spreadsheets. I set the house key next to the note, the same key that had stuck in the lock 3 months ago when I'd come home defeated. It looked smaller now, just a piece of metal. 3:12 a.m. when Nina and I finished loading her car. The house stood dark against the winter sky. Christmas lights on the timer I'd programmed already shut off. In 6 hours. Gerald would wake up expecting coffee. He'd find the empty maker, the note, the key. "You sure about this?" Nina asked, watching me look back at the house. "He wanted me gone by New Year's," I said, settling into the passenger seat. "I'm just being efficient." As we drove away, I didn't look back again. But I did pull up my email, where Mr. Doyle had already responded. "Can show the studio at 9 a.m. First month in security deposit, and it's yours." I had enough saved for that, barely. The freelance work would have to grow fast, but at least I wouldn't be a leech anymore. I'd be free. The studio was 400 square feet of possibility. Water stain on the ceiling. Radiator that clanged like a ghost with a hammer, single window overlooking a dumpster. But it was mine. Mr. Doyle handed over the keys at 9:45 a.m., barely glancing at my credit check. "Previous tenant left some furniture," he said, gesturing at a card table and folding chair in the corner. "Trash day's Tuesday." I kept both. Nina helped me haul everything up 3 flights. My air mattress wheezed to life in the corner that would become my bedroom. The milk crate of design books became my nightstand. I set up my workspace by the window. The card table held my laptop and tablet. The folding chair would do until I could afford better. My portfolio materials went in neat stacks along the wall. "It's very minimalist," Nina said, surveying the space. "It's perfect," I said, and meant it. By noon, I'd received 17 missed calls from Gerald, 12 from Paige, 3 from Trevor. I deleted the voicemails without listening and blocked Gerald's number. Paige, I'd deal with later. The first week taught me the rhythm of survival. Morning emails at the coffee shop down the street where Wi-Fi was free with a $2 coffee. Afternoons designing at my card table, wrapped in a blanket because heat cost money. Evenings running the stairs in my building because gym memberships were a luxury now. My savings account read $912 after the deposit and first month's rent. The bakery paid their invoice $300 that went straight to groceries and the electric bill. I ate rice and beans, pasta with butter, apples when they were on sale. I learned which grocery store marked down produce at 8 p.m., which coffee shop gave free refills, which library had the best heating. Then, January 7th, the email that changed everything. "Ms. Hayes, your portfolio impressed us. Northline Creative would like to discuss a 3-month contract for the River and Grain Markets rebrand. Full-time hours, competitive rate. Can you start Monday?" Competitive rate turned out to be $45 an hour, more than I'd made at Halo Bite. I said yes before they finished talking. River and Grain Markets wanted a complete visual overhaul logo, website, packaging, marketing materials. I threw myself into the work with desperate gratitude. Arrived early, stayed late, iterated until my eyes burned. The creative director, Marcus, noticed. "You work like someone's chasing you," he said one evening, finding me still at my desk at 7:30 p.m. "Maybe someone is," I said, not looking up from the mock-ups. The checks started coming. I upgraded from air mattress to futon, added a real desk from a thrift store, bought vegetables that weren't on sale. The elderly woman next door, Mrs. Chen, started inviting me for tea, teaching me how to arrange furniture in small spaces, which plants thrived without sunlight. "You're rebuilding," she said one afternoon, watching me hang curtains I'd sewn from clearance fabric. "It's a good look on you." I started therapy in February. Found a sliding scale counselor who specialized in family trauma and financial abuse. "Yes," she confirmed. "It was abuse." "Yes." My response was normal. "No, I didn't owe anyone an explanation." "Boundaries aren't walls," she said. "They're gates. You decide who gets through." Paige got through. Eventually. She called from a number I didn't recognize in late February. "The house is chaos," she said without preamble. "Dad's electricity got shut off for 2 days because he didn't understand the account transfer. He's paying 3 times what he used to for internet. He can't figure out the streaming services." "Sounds like he needs to learn," I said, sketching logo variations while she talked. "Lauren, he's miserable. He was miserable when I was there too. At least now it's not my fault." Silence. Then, "You were paying for everything, weren't you? 6 months of everything." "I didn't know." "You didn't ask." More silence. Finally, "He keeps calling you ungrateful. Says you left without warning." "He gave me until New Year's. I left December 26th. That's efficient planning by his standards." "He wants you to come back." I looked around my studio. My design wall covered in river and grain mock-ups. My futon with its handmade quilt from the thrift store. My coffee maker a $20 miracle that worked perfectly. My plants from Mrs. Chen thriving on the windowsill. "No," I said. "I'm done being his ghost employee." March brought contract extension offers. Northline wanted me for another 6 months. River and Grain was so happy they recommended me to 2 other clients. My bank account crept above $5,000. I bought a real bed frame, invited Nina over for dinner that didn't involve rice and beans. The calls from Gerald stopped in April. Paige said he'd hired a cleaning service, started getting pre-made meals delivered. The cost, apparently, was staggering. "He knows now," she said, "what you were worth." But I wasn't interested in his revelation. I was designing, creating, building something that was entirely mine. The studio felt bigger now, filled with work and purpose instead of emptiness and escape. The call came on a Tuesday in May, 4:15 p.m. Gerald's number unblocked now because I no longer flinched at seeing it. "The internet's been shut off for 3 months, he said without greeting. "The account was in your name." "Yes." "You need to fix this." "No." Silence. Then, tighter. "I've been using mobile data. Do you know what that costs?" "Not my concern." "Lauren, be reasonable. Just call them and Gerald." I set down my stylus, gave him my full attention for the first time in months. "I transferred that account in December. You had to create your own. That was 5 months ago." They wanted a deposit, a credit check, installation fees for a new account. "Yes, that's how it works when you're not piggybacking on someone else's credit." "Piggybacking?" His voice climbed. "I'm your father, who called me a leech at Christmas dinner after I'd been paying your bills for 6 months." The math was so clear now, with distance. Every Venmo transfer, every automatic payment, every grocery receipt. I'd built a paper trail without realizing I was building a case. "That's different," he said. "You were living here. So were you. But only one of us was paying for it." I heard him slam something a drawer. "Maybe. Paige says you kept records." There it was. Paige must have mentioned my spreadsheet, the receipts, the evidence of what a leech actually contributes. "Every cent," I confirmed. "What do you want?" Nothing. I wanted nothing from you, Gerald. That's why I left. Don't be dramatic. Obviously, you want something. Or you wouldn't have what paid my own way, covered your expenses, made your life convenient while you called me a failure. I never said failure. Leech. You said Leech. Another pause. In the background, I heard the beep of his coffee maker, the expensive one I'd bought him last Father's Day, back when I thought good gifts might translate to appreciation. The streaming services too, he said finally, all canceled. Changed to single-user accounts in my name. You're welcome to get your own. This is vindictive. This is boundaries. He hung up. I went back to designing a brand package for a local brewery, thinking that was the end of it. But Thursday brought Paige to my door, holding a coffee and a folder. Dad doesn't know I'm here, she said. I let her in. She looked around the studio, taking in the design wall, the actual furniture, the evidence of a life being lived. It's nice, she said. Cozy. It's mine. She set the folder on my desk. I did some digging, went through Dad's accounts, cross-referenced with yours. She opened it, revealing bank statements, bills, receipts. You paid $9,800 over 6 months. That's not including labor. $9,696, I corrected. I rounded up. Lauren. She sat on my futon, looking younger than her 27 years. I owe you an apology. We watched you drowning and called it swimming. You called it freeloading. Trevor did. I just didn't correct him. Same thing. Paige. She nodded, absorbed that. I want to make it right. I'll pay you back. I don't want money. Then what? I thought about it. What did I want? Not revenge. Exactly. Not even vindication. Though that would be nice. I want Dad to admit it, I said finally. In writing. What I paid. What I did. What it was worth. I want him to acknowledge that I wasn't a leech. Paige laughed, bitter. He'd rather sell the house. Then he can sell the house. She stood to leave, then turned back. You know what the cleaning service charges $300 a week. The meal delivery's another $200. The lawn service. The handyman for basic repairs, he's spending more monthly than you spent in 6 months. Sounds like a personal problem. He wants to take you to court for the internet thing. Breach of contract or something. Now I laughed. Let him. I have receipts for everything, including the Christmas dinner groceries I bought for the meal where he called me a parasite. Paige winced. I recorded that. What? On my phone. Trevor wanted to capture Dad's toast about our success. Got the whole thing instead, including the Leech comment. The room tilted slightly. You have a recording. And I've already sent it to you. Check your email. After she left, I sat at my desk and called Mara Keene, an attorney Nina had recommended for a different matter, listened to her intake questions, sent her my spreadsheet, forwarded Paige's recording. Small claims court, Mara said after reviewing everything. We file for reimbursement of household expenses. Not typically winnable, except... She paused. He created a hostile environment, forced you out, while benefiting from your financial support. With this documentation, we have a case. How strong? Strong enough that he'll wish he'd just renewed his own internet service. I thought about Gerald's precious efficiency, his balanced columns, his love of clear-cut numbers. File it, I said, and make sure the amount includes the service fees for every transfer I made. The courtroom smelled like old wood and floor wax. Small claims court, room 203, 9:30 a.m. On a Thursday in June, Gerald sat at the defendant's table in his best suit, the navy one he wore to tax presentations. I recognized his nervous tell adjusting his watch every 30 seconds. Judge Martinez, a woman with silver hair and reading glasses on a chain, reviewed the papers with the efficiency of someone who'd seen every possible family dispute. Paige sat 3 rows back, having taken a personal day to attend. Trevor was notably absent. Case 2024 SC 0847, the clerk announced. Hayes versus Hayes. claim for household expense reimbursement. Mara stood. Shh, Your Honor. My client seeks reimbursement for household expenses paid during her 6-month residency in the defendant's home, from October through December of last year. Objection. Gerald's lawyer said yes. He'd hired a lawyer for small claims court. The plaintiff was a family member residing rent-free. Any contributions were voluntary gifts. Judge Martinez peered over her glasses. Mr. Hayes, did your daughter pay rent? No, Your Honor. Ms. Hayes, did you have a rental agreement? No, Your Honor, I said. But I have documentation of extensive financial contributions. Proceed. Mara pulled out the first exhibit. Bank statements showing automated payments for internet service. 6 months at $99 monthly, all in my client's name, for the defendant's residence. She laid them out systematically. Streaming services, phone bills, the family plan I'd maintained, shown in neat columns with highlighter marking Gerald's line. Grocery receipts, Mara continued, producing a stack that made Gerald's lawyer shift uncomfortably, totaling approximately $2,400 over 6 months. Then the utility contributions, the hardware store receipts for home repairs, photos of the deck I'd painted, tagged with dates, the bathroom, before and after my work, email confirmations of service transfers. Your Honor, Mara said, my client contributed $9,696 in documented expenses, plus approximately $3,000 in uncompensated labor at minimum wage. We seek full reimbursement, plus court costs. Gerald's lawyer stood. These were voluntary contributions from an adult child living rent-free, no different from buying groceries or helping with chores. Chores, I said, louder than intended. Judge Martinez looked at me. Ms. Hayes, you'll have your opportunity to speak. When that opportunity came, I stood with my prepared statement. But then I saw Gerald adjusting his watch again, and I set the paper aside. Your Honor, on Christmas Day, at a dinner I cooked, at a table I set, my father called me a leech. He said I contributed nothing of value and ordered me to leave by New Year's. I left the next day. Relevance. Gerald's lawyer asked. The relevance, I said, turning to face Gerald directly, is that he received all these services while actively demeaning their value. He benefited from my labor while denying it existed. Judge Martinez turned to Gerald. Mr. Hayes, did you make these statements? Gerald's jaw worked. It was taken out of context. I have a recording, Paige said from the gallery. The courtroom went still. Judge Martinez nodded. I'll allow it. Paige came forward with her phone. The courtroom speakers crackled to life with Gerald's voice. You're a leech. You can't stay here anymore. My voice, steady. Excuse me, I need to check the dessert. The recording stopped. Gerald's face had gone pale. Mr. Hayes, Judge Martinez said, you called your daughter a leech while she was financially supporting your household. I didn't know about all the payments. You didn't know about the internet you used daily, the streaming services you watched, the food that appeared in your refrigerator. Silence. Ms. Whitmore. The judge addressed Paige. You're the defendant's daughter as well. Yes, Your Honor. Can you speak to these contributions? Paige stood. My sister paid for everything. I saw the bills in her name. I ate the food she bought. I watched her paint that deck in 40-degree weather while Dad was inside watching Netflix on the account she paid for. Thank you. Judge Martinez reviewed her notes. Mr. Hayes, I've seen enough. Your daughter provided substantial financial support while residing in your home. Your own testimony confirms you demanded she leave. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff. She began reading the judgment. The defendant will reimburse the plaintiff for documented household expenses in the amount of $9,696, plus court filing fees of $225. Gerald's lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. Gerald shook his head. Furthermore, Judge Martinez continued, Mr. Hayes, I need you to verbally acknowledge the amount owed and the services provided. For the record, this wasn't standard. But Judge Martinez had that look, the one that said she'd seen too many fathers dismiss too many daughters. Mr. Hayes, Please state for the record what you owe your daughter and why." Gerald stood slowly. His voice came out rough. $9,696. For internet service. Each word seemed to cost him. Streaming services, phone plan, groceries, utilities, home repairs. Provided by my daughter. Who you called? A long pause. A Leech. Despite these contributions. Yes, Judge Martinez nodded. The term leech appears to have been misapplied. Mr. Hayes, judgment for the plaintiff. You have 30 days to pay. She raised her gavel. Court adjourned. The gavel came down with a crack that echoed through the room. Gerald stood frozen as his lawyer gathered papers. I watched him realize that his own efficiency, his love of documentation, of clear financial records had been turned against him. Gerald signed the receipt for the court judgment with the same precise signature he used on tax documents. The clerk stamped it twice, one copy for him, one for me. His fingers trembled slightly as he folded his version into exact thirds. "Judgment entered," the clerk announced, the words falling like dominoes in the quiet courtroom. Mara gathered our documents with practiced efficiency, sliding them into her leather portfolio. She gave me a small nod, the kind that said, "We're done here," and we won. I walked out of the courtroom first, pushing through the heavy wooden doors into the hallway where June sunlight streamed through tall windows. The courthouse steps stretched before me, worn marble that had seen 1,000 other reckonings. Behind me, I heard Gerald's dress shoes clicking against the floor, that particular rhythm I'd known since childhood, quick, efficient, always moving toward the next task. Paige caught up with me on the steps. "Lauren, wait." I stopped but didn't turn around. "That was brave," she said. "That was necessary." She came around to face me, squinting in the bright light. "He's already transferred the money. I saw him do it on his phone before we even left the courtroom." Of course he had. Gerald Hayes would never miss a payment deadline, even one that proved his daughter wasn't the parasite he'd claimed. "Good," I said, and meant it. Nina was waiting by the courthouse entrance with 2 cups of coffee. She handed me one lavender latte, my new favorite since I could afford small luxuries again. "How does justice taste?" she asked. "Like $9,696, I said, and we both laughed, not bitter, just free. My phone buzzed, a notification from my banking app, direct deposit received. The exact amount, already there. Gerald's efficiency working in my favor for once. I looked back at the courthouse one more time. Through the glass doors, I could see him standing at the information desk, probably asking about parking validation, still calculating, still counting costs, still trying to balance the columns of his life. The coffee was perfect hot, strong, nothing like the bitter brew I'd made for him every morning for 6 months. Nina linked her arm through mine. "What now?" she asked. "Now I go back to work," I said. "Northline wants to extend my contract again. River and Grain is recommending me to 3 more clients. My studio needs a real couch." That's it. No victory lap, no confrontation with Gerald. I thought about it as we walked toward her car. The money would help God. Would it help? It would cover the security deposit I'd drained, rebuild my emergency fund, maybe even allow for a better apartment soon. But that wasn't why I'd done it. I'd done it because I needed him to say it out loud, in a court of law, in front of a judge and his other daughter and anyone else who cared to witness what I'd contributed, what it was worth, what he'd refused to see. The word leech had reversed its course, like I'd promised myself it would. My phone rang Gerald's number. I declined the call, then blocked it again. Not out of anger this time, just completion. We'd said everything that needed saying, counted everything that needed counting. 3 weeks later, I signed a lease on a 1-bedroom apartment with actual walls between the bedroom and kitchen. The day I moved, Mrs. Chen from my old building gave me a jade plant. "For prosperity," she said. "You've earned it." The plant sits on my desk now, next to my laptop and tablet and the contracts that keep coming. Sometimes I look at it while I'm working this living thing that grows with just a little water and light, no matter how small the pot seems at first. I never spoke to Gerald again. Paige sends updates occasionally. He hired a personal assistant to manage his household, someone who costs more monthly than I'd spent in half a year. He still adjusts his watch when he's nervous. He still takes his coffee strong, black, ready at 6:45 a.m. But someone else makes it now. Someone who sends him an invoice. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing your own thoughts and experiences. Sometimes the best revenge really is a life well lived, documented, and properly invoiced.